Hello and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man whose personality is totally different before and after the crime.
Tim Longo. Yep, that's a stumper.
The crime of recording this podcast for 448 episodes, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a lot.
Many crimes.
Before we get to the game at hand, just want to remind folks of our schedule here for the rest of October, which includes an update on the game we're playing. We are releasing this on October 22nd, and that night, the night that this comes out, if you're listening to it when it comes out, I will be streaming Portal 2 with Tim on Tim's Twitch channel at twitch.tv/Tim Longo Jr. with the JR at the end. There's a link in the show notes. On October 28th, which is 6 days hence from when this releases, we will be doing a live stream on that same Twitch channel, a live show recording. We will discuss Portal 2, both the single player and the co-op. We've been playing co-op together, and we will record that and interact with the audience with questions. We have an email already. If you have others, by all means, get them in so that we have them. But we can also try to pull it from the chat, but be warned that it will be juggling. So we'll do our best. And we shall see how that all goes. This is our first time ever. That is a reward, of course, for our Communities Defeating Games for Charity event, which was last January. Their next one is January 24th and 25th, and there are applications available now. So if you look at Defeating Games for charity.com, I believe, you can get an application there, or you can go to the Discord. There's a link in the show notes. Then finally, we will actually not be finishing Deadly Premonition tonight as we originally considered. It is a longer and deeper game, and Tim has not played it before. So we're going to instead plow through and return to it the week following Halloween. Phew, those all the announcements. We're good.
Well done.
You have any questions on that, sir? Or or are you just going to assume I'm going to send you email at the appropriate time?
No, that sounds good. I think I get it. Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, then let us return to Deadly Premonition. We are, of course, playing the director's cut, which is, perfectly ported, right, Tim? It's a precise, exacting, perfect in every way port.
I'm technically playing Deadly Premonition Origins, which is the title of the port for the Switch. So yeah, a little bit of a PSA on that. I wanted to hit the ports topic just in a way to not necessarily throw shade at anybody, but maybe more to celebrate the ports that are out there that are very, very good. I think we take them for granted.
Yeah.
And a game like this always reminds me of that. So if you are playing this game or ever seek to play this game, you heard already probably my Steam woes. Doesn't work on Steam Deck at all. And there is a way to get it to work, but it's pretty difficult and might even not work after all of the work. I know Lost Lake and some others and myself, there's frame rate issues on the Steam, even if you're playing on a desktop PC. So I swapped to the Switch. That port is also not wonderful. I've crashed multiple times. The performance is actually even bad. Not as bad as it is on the PC, but just a warning. So it's definitely playable, but I definitely hit 20 frames or so every now and then. And I just feel like it shouldn't do that.
Yeah. I will say performance was not its strong suit to begin with.
Yeah. So
especially when you're out and about, like in the open world, or when the Red Raincoat Killer is in the sawmill with you, with the two cameras, like that also feels sluggish. That we talked about last week, but and even when you're like running around, I guess when you're running from him as well, you also have the picture-in-picture, and it's not great in those locations either. But I was outside the milk barn, and just walked around back, and I was like, whoa, what just happened there? Like just suddenly chugging, and
Yeah.
I mean, granted, that's a PS3, which is it was natively ported to that. I don't know. There's not, yeah.
So the first version
I'm not
was
gonna throw stones. I've worked on plenty of projects where frame rate was not our top concern. So it is what it
yeah,
is.
no, it's not. I'm not definitely not saying it's easy. And like I said, I don't want to throw shade because porting is hard as well, especially in the PS3, Xbox 360 era. You can speak better than
Yeah,
on
I mean,
that
it's just
than
very
I because
divergent hardware.
those structures, those infrastructures, or architectures rather, are totally different or very different.
Yeah, pretty
So
much totally different.
yeah, so I get it for sure. I just mainly wanted to celebrate those ports out there that you play and don't even realize they're ports, because it's a lot of hard work and a lot goes into making them feel pretty seamless,
Yeah,
especially for porting forward. Uh,
and
so
credit to the engineers who work on some of these big teams that do engines that port whole engines to support multiple games on multiple
mm,
platforms, Unreal and Unity and Godot
yeah,
and what have you. That's a lot of work too, especially supporting a huge client base, of creators using those engines to have to to have to also deal with that. The nice thing about using those engines, that work is hopefully done for you. Some probably better than others, but you know, and not that there's no work for any individual team to then go and test and make sure it all works. We did have some feedback in the Discord that this director's cut or Origins, I'm pretty sure Origins is from the director's cut, is um, has problems in this regard, and they did mention as well that there was actually a difficulty mode, an easier difficulty on the original game, which I thought I had remembered and then didn't see it in the director's cut. I was like, oh, I must be
mm,
misremembering, because I remember the sawmill being pretty difficult, or maybe some point later in the game, I don't recall, and being like, oh, I guess I'll just bump the difficulty down. But then, when I didn't see it, I was like, oh, I must have that wrong. But apparently they did tweak that as well. I mean, I'm fine with games being on the easy side. That's not a these days not an issue I care about much. But I used to play games on the harder difficulty all the time.
so you're saying that the director's cut is the easy mode, or they
I
took it
suspect
out?
it's been rebalanced, but it is apparently easier than the default difficulty on the original game.
That's good.
Yeah, yeah, because it would be bad to remove it and then just have it be too hard.
Right,
That would be
right.
a poor director's cut choice, I think. Um, I don't think this is a game which benefits a lot from difficulty necessarily, especially when there are performance issues. The aiming's, a lot of the mechanics are pretty janky and
Mhm.
don't have a lot of support that would have been there, when this game came out. Halo 2, Halo and Halo 2 were, had already been well established by this point, and showed you how to do aiming and things like that, even, granted first person versus third. But a lot of the fundamentals are very similar in those two things. And it's, especially if you've got a reticle on screen, most of that stuff just tracks right over. So it's kind of unforgivable that the aiming is as bad as it is.
Well, and RE4, which you mentioned, I think last one of the episodes, right?
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
being in the same relative genre.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah,
Anyway.
plenty of examples. It just wasn't a priority. I feel like it is a bummer. I know we're going to probably talk about the sawmill next or soon, but it is a bummer to me as a player. So like I'm ahead of you now, and in the next day, and there was a section when I got to the gallery that I was a little bit suspicious might turn into combat, but
Hmm.
it didn't end up. But the tone, like the kind of the mood and the tone was starting, and I was like, oh, here comes, and and I had this feeling at that moment of like not looking forward to it.
Yeah.
That's not what you want
No, no, it's not
in
what
the
you
middle
want.
of your game, to be like not looking forward to a certain sequence. So
Yeah. Well, we should. I mean, we can probably switch to talk about the enemies in the sawmill because I think that that's so far the place where, and then we'll talk about the sawmill more broadly, but where all of the survival horror combat stuff actually I think works pretty well, and showcases a lot of the things I really like about the enemies in this game. I mean, there's only a handful of types shown at this point. I don't really remember if there are kind of more types. They're mostly these sort of they look like townspeople, or ghosts of townspeople that have had, that are dead or something, have crossed over into some kind of shadow realm. But what I really appreciate about them is that they emerge, in most cases. Some cases they're just kind of placed, but they sort of emerge from these shadowy spaces on the walls, on the floors. They make a certain sound as this is happening, and and there's another sound that happens when often these entrances close up, so that that another one's not going to come through. There's extra entrances in there, so you're like, oh, are there going to be more? So there's always kind of this edge of terror. There's a whole loop of survival horror enemy goodness that I think, other than the the shooting itself, is actually pretty good. In that whole section, there's a little bit of that in the sort of other places we've seen combat, but this one I think actually all the pieces kind of come together really, really well. You even have a sort of infinite spawning area as well, where you're like, oh, they're going to come out of these places, and then they're going to come after me if I go down these steps, and like you kind of like have to balance a lot of stuff. And I think it's not a highly polished combat system, but I actually think they spent a lot of time on the creepiness of the enemies, and their sort of, we talked in Republic Commando a lot about how the first time you saw an enemy, or how enemies were introduced to the
Mm-hmm.
player, was a huge thing. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that as well from a sort of design standpoint. But just as a pure play experience, I really, I really enjoy all the support that sort of cycle of enemies works.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It is. I think you put it well in that the sort of the whole loop of it. Yeah, and I think I guess from a design perspective, what I also appreciate, and I think we would always try to strive for, and don't sometimes achieve, sometimes we don't achieve, but um, enemies aren't just about being an obstacle to shoot or to be an obstacle to fight in to get past. They are kind of their own little mini stories, and it comes down to the first time you see them, which they sort of introduced. They had some pretty good introduction moments in the very opening section, when you're in the forest, like that,
Right.
on that trail,
Yeah.
where they introduced the zombies originally.
Yeah. That's a
And
good point.
and there was that dog moment, right, which
Yeah.
was like a foreshadowing. And so they actually, they did some, not on the Silent Hills, quality level, but like in the Silent Hill space of how to introduce some of these characters. Everyone had seen zombies by then, so it's not like that was a new trope, but they were thoughtful about it. And then to your point on repeating that, I'm trying to think of like the shadow thing was sort of a thing in Alan Wake 2, ironically, in the same year, but Eco had come out earlier. There was some
Hmm.
concept of shadow. I think enemies coming out of shadows, it just gives them a lot of flexibility to make hallways a lot scarier
Yeah.
because you can just any surface can be a spawner. So I agree. The other like little thing I mentioned, I think last episode, that it's hard to say where it came from, because you could see it coming from a certain horror genre in film and I guess mythology. But the way that the enemies, a lot of them bend over backwards
Yeah.
and then just conveniently place their head in the middle in their center mass,
Yeah.
which is sort of like creepy, but also nicely mechanically better for you if you're doing
Yeah.
lock-ons. So it's kind of helps the player out a little bit there too. Giving them the benefit of the doubt that they wanted to help the player in that way. But yeah, I agree. I think the sawmill section is very spooky. It's the most extended so far that I think we've seen. It's definitely the most elaborate and extended combat sequence, and it felt very Resident Evil in because it was so long, you had multiple rooms, and then I'm sure we'll get to some of the sort of set piece moments of it in a bit, but there was just a lot. And as we talked about last time, it's integrated in the um, story collectibles, system. So as you're going through the combat, you're picking up another one of the clues.
Right.
But you have to go through the whole sawmill to get each of the 3 clues, and the whole sawmill is combat. So yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
it's a very extended sequence that way. I like the I like to this was a later Resident Evil, but the baby sounds, the audio design is also quite good in the sawmill. But at several points there's like a crying baby,
Oh yeah, right.
and I kept thinking, oh no, I hope it's not going to be the baby. And I think that's Village, maybe. I think that's Village where there's the baby.
Oh, that's right. Oh yikes! Yeah, that
Yeah,
was
right.
just horrifying.
And
Poor thing.
I kept thinking about it. I was like, I hope I'm not confusing, what game that baby was in, because I don't want to fight the baby. So
Yeah, man, RE8. That is a damn good game.
yeah,
Damn fine cup of game.
cup of game.
Uh, yeah, I mean, there also it's just like so many quirky things in this game. That like one of the interacts throughout the sawmill are toilets full of
Yeah,
blood,
yeah,
and then also if you flush them, you might get a collectible.
yeah,
It's like what the.
yeah,
Although red, I guess blood and red. I'm not sure if all of the red, you know, thematically all of the red is meant to be blood or not, but red is definitely thematic with the leaves and the
yeah. With the
vines.
leaves, the
Yeah,
seeds, the vines, the
seeds,
raincoat.
the raincoat. Yeah, so I don't know if that's
There's a
all blood.
hand in there. There's
Oh yeah,
that
that
are
was a
also
great.
leaves.
Yeah, that was a
Uh,
Kojima moment. I feel like where they're
yeah,
like, we're gonna make the hand a doorknob,
yeah.
or the doorknob a hand, and then it's gonna grab your hand when you. Yeah, that's I don't know.
It's a great moment, and you have to shoot the hands off the
Oh
tree in
yeah,
order
the
to get
tree,
the
right?
yeah. So there's like a tree
It's a
that is like
puzzle.
protected. Yeah, it's like a little puzzle, little combat puzzle. Where you have to shoot these hands until you get the right one, or maybe just shoot a certain number of them. Um,
No, there's
and
one. If you shoot the right one first, you only have to shoot one.
oh, okay, I shot
It
two,
was.
but there was no negative to that. Although
Yeah, I'm
there was
sure.
a
No, yeah,
timer, I believe.
right.
So
I don't remember. I got the hand symbol from someplace, and it told me which one to shoot, but I don't remember what
oh, huh.
it
I wonder
was.
if
And it was
I
like a
might have just
clue.
I might have missed that clue and just not done it, like not pick that out. Like, it might have been
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
look at the door or something, and I wonder if I didn't do
Now
that.
I can't even remember
Yeah.
what it was, but yeah, there was a clue that told you which one to shoot, and
Oh,
so I
okay.
got it on the first try. But
I guess I got lucky there. So
I'm
thank
sure, like I'm
goodness.
sure you're right. It's like their puzzles generally are not too punitive, right? It's just like you just have to find. Yeah, they're pretty simple.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing that I appreciate about this game is that not all of their systems are um, are polished. Many many of them are not polished, but they're also not demanding. Um, so there's nothing worse than having a system that is like both not really responsive to the player's input, but then also demands a high amount of skill. Of like
Mm,
got to pull off this perfect timing of some window of something or whatever. I mean, the QTEs I think here are probably the one example where I'm like that goes a little too fast for me.
right.
You know, and it also feels it's it's rendering a frame behind. So even though it looks like I hit it, there
I
might
think we're
be
missing frames. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it definitely feels like that is the probably the one case where I'm like, I think I hit that one, guys. I don't know, maybe be a little more generous, um, because I also got killed by the raincoat killer in the sawmill once because I was like, oh, I have to hit R1. Like I wasn't expecting that. And I thought I had, but it didn't think I had. So,
Yeah. Right.
it is what it is. It's fine. But yeah, I mean, I think the the whole environment of the sawmill is really, is really fun. It's meant to be a shuttered sawmill and abandoned, so it is one of those kind of liminal spaces. They're like, it should have been torn down years ago as you're driving over there, and it's like, well, it's kind of too late now. Anna was already murdered there. It's like, leave it to
Right.
York to say something totally like, ugh, okay, thanks, York, got it. If we had responsibly torn down the sawmill, this young girl wouldn't have died. Yeah, he's quite a piece of work.
Yeah.
But
Well, how about that? How about that escape or that sort of ending sequence though, with the
yeah,
raincoat
the
murder?
raincoat
What
killer, yeah.
raincoat killer?
With the so we talked a little bit last week about how there's a point at which you basically get to a room where there's a save, you can save, there's a phone. And I actually like the double duty that the phone is playing there, because earlier
Mm,
you have a similar situation where there's a phone, and I don't think you can save at it. It's just ringing. There's other stuff in that, but it looks like a safe room in a Resident Evil game, for example. There's
right.
your forget what they call it, but your sort of backup inventory, right? Your what do they call it?
Yeah, I
Um,
forget your case or something. Your
yeah,
weapon
something.
case.
Yeah, you can send stuff to your deeper inventory, so you don't have if you don't have space to carry it around. Um, and then there's like a bed, and you can shave there, oddly, but there's no save point at that spot. There is one that comes not too long after that, but the phone is ringing, so you don't have to answer the phone. It's just going to keep ringing. Although if you're of a certain age, a ringing phone like that just is like cuts to you. Like, I gotta answer the phone. Nowadays the phone rings, I'm like, I don't even want to look at it. But when I was growing up, a phone ringing was like a big deal. And you had to answer it. So, and it's a similar kind of ring tone. But then you get to this later room, and it's very similar, except that the phone here is now a save spot. And the sort of, in the fiction, he's calling into the office from the phones, and that's your save. So they're kind of sprinkled throughout town. There's like payphones. Kids ask your parents. There's phones, and there's a phone in the hospital. Whatever. There's phones all over the place. You can just save at any one of them. But after you've saved in this one, the phone then turns into an interact to advance the murderer. He's like, "Where are you?" Like, or "I can see you," I guess he says, or they say. We don't actually know gender yet.
There's a sliding viewport in the door
That's right. Yeah,
as well. Yeah.
yeah. Which I remember coming up to him and being like, "Well, why would you make a different door?" But because I forgot that he was going to look through it. I don't remember a lot of details like that. So then oh my god, and they do a really good job of framing that, because you can't miss, because of the way he interacts with doors. You can't miss that it's got a hole that you can look through.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
it's really nicely, all of that really ties together really well. It's almost like they said, well, this is how he always opens a door, and they're like, well, what can we do with that?
Right.
When you establish those systems early, you then try to, like, well, what can we, how can we change what the doors, how the doors look to play on that? It feels like an opportunity they might have found in play, or in development
I
rather.
think that's a good. We must have talked about that with some of the other survival horror we've played, but I feel like that's the one of the bread and butter aspects of survival horror games is like you have to not prey upon, you have to play on the expectations of the player to create those moments of uncertainty, whether it's a jump scare or whether it's just a silence. It's like, oh, I expected this to happen because it normally does, and then it didn't.
Right.
So yeah, I think that they learned some good lessons from some of the other classics about that.
Yeah, and I feel that way too about um, about the phone that is first a save
Yeah,
point,
really
and
good, really
then
good.
then a menacing object in the same place.
Hmm.
It would be like if a Resident Evil typewriter suddenly turned into a mimic.
Right.
The second time you went to use it or something, you're like, oh my god. um,
Oh, that
you
is
know,
terrifying proposition. So now I'm thinking of mimics in Dark Souls, and
I,
I'm like,
I
oh my god.
went there already, but I didn't want to say it, so that you would be the one.
Geez, yeah.
So
It's just its mouth opens and
yeah, uh, yeah. That first one you hit, and you're like, no, because
uh,
it takes you a long time to get to that one, as I recall. It's in Sen's Fortress, but
yep, yep.
but
Memories.
memories, yes. Yeah, so I think that yeah, that whole section plays out really well because then, as you pointed out last week, there's a sort of the hiding in one of the hiding places in there, and he also, when he departs, he throws the axe at your hiding space as well.
Yeah, yeah,
just so good, and you have to
yeah.
hold your breath several times. Your your pulse rate is going up. There's one of the indicators in the upper left of the screen. There's a health, and then there's sort of a heart monitor, which comes into play whenever you're doing stamina related things. So you can run, and your heart rate monitor will go up. And I think there are some objects you can find that will, like, keep
Yeah.
your stamina
There's a
low.
stabilizer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the stabilizer is great. Yes, is one of them, which will keep it artificially low for a while, sort of like in a Metal Gear game where it's like I got to stabilize so I can snipe or whatever. Um, but this will keep your heart rate down. Whenever you're holding your breath, that's one of those stressful moments. And actually, just being in the close confines of one of those lockers, because after he left, I was just in there for a while, and I'm like, oh no, I got to get out because the meter's still going up, which was also good. So there's a lot of, like, you start to see how some of these systems are coming together, and can create dread and drama throughout the sawmill. I feel like they've kind of stacked the pieces up to this point to get you there.
Yeah, I really like I still haven't finished it, but I'm probably about 20 hours into it, and I stopped because I just my nerves couldn't take it anymore. So maybe I'll get back to it. But Alien Isolation, I just think about this room, and I'm trying to think of any like Resident Evil or other survival horror games that have done it. But this room is so that game.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just really am curious to know if that was just like coincidence or if there was any inspiration from this game to, extrapolate that out to basically a whole game about
yeah,
hiding in things when there's an undefeatable, is that a word?
yeah,
Undefeatable character, and so yeah, uh,
yeah.
that's
And I don't
that's
remember if does it really happen in the films. I don't remember something similar to that in the Alien movies.
I
I
mean,
might be.
people are hiding all the time,
Yeah,
but
they're
yeah,
hiding, but
not.
they don't, like, get in a space like that where
No, I don't think
their
so.
vision
Like,
is limited.
not exactly, yeah, but just the whole thing about
It
vision
is kind of a
limited.
horror movie thing, though. I feel like that I've probably
Right.
seen that in a
Holding your
horror movie.
breath,
Yeah,
right, is in both.
yeah.
There's just a lot of similarities and so anyway, I had no idea that that was in this. I wonder, do you remember if it happens again in this game or is this a
Uh,
one-off?
I don't remember, but
Hmm.
I feel like it does. I feel
Yeah,
like it
I
happens
hope so.
again, but yeah, it's a good moment. But
Well,
it
it
definitely
makes it
plays up
makes
the
the
menace of
killer
the thing.
feel very powerful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
But you
The
can
menace
still.
of the raincoat killer is, like, really, really heavy in this room.
Yeah.
You feel terrified, and then you, as you pointed out last week, and then you have to run away from him or them. So you
Yeah, and then
in that
yeah,
environment.
right. And then before we get there, the interesting thing about this killer as a boss character is York, and he talks about this many more times later as in places I've gotten to. He's constantly talking about how he's going to catch the killer, right, honest killer. And the funny thing about that is like, yeah, but you've met the killer multiple times,
Yeah,
and you can't there you have to run away. So what do you mean by that? Like, are
yeah,
you gonna like reveal, so I'm just curious to see how that all plays out. Like, is it like a moment in a dinner where you're like, and he's the killer, or something?
yeah.
And but it's like
Like
if
a
that's the case,
werewolf story.
he's still gonna be able to take everyone out. So it's just a funny juxtaposition of this, seemingly supernatural almost entity being this boss villain, but also the killer. But maybe it is a Twin Peaks kind of switcheroo, which I have an update on later, as Jen and I are continuing to watch the show. And Bob is coming into it more. Spoiler for anyone who has never watched Twin Peaks, but it's too late for you. And there's sort of supernatural, like who did kill Laura Palmer, and like how does that all work, and so how do you catch somebody who isn't real, like all that kind of stuff. So obviously that show and goes well many places by season 3, but anyway.
Yeah, and sadly, the actor who played Bob was no longer around by the time season 3 came around. He had passed away, I think.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah. So they had, and then Judy, and anyway, we shouldn't go down that road. But yeah, so let's talk about the escape sequence.
Yeah, so the escape sequence, like you pointed out last week, was the running away from the killer, but it was, it's fresh in my mind now. I mean, when you mentioned it, I was like, oh yeah, that's right, it has stuff like that. But one of the things I really liked about it that I didn't remember and we didn't talk about last week was that there were points where you run up and, like you said, you can't see what's ahead of you. So it's like, I've got to climb up on something, but he's also going to throw an axe at me that I have to evade, or take damage. And then I think my favorite moment is like, there's a point at which he's behind you and you're basically going back through an area that you've already gone through, which I remember going all the way deep into that room and thinking, there's no exit to get to the elevator from here. Do I have to go all the way back? Because you've gone pretty deep into the second level of this elevator, of this sawmill rather, via an elevator, and like you had to go all the way in to turn the power back on, and now you're going all the way back out. And I'm like, oh, that's that's kind of old school design. We don't do that anymore. We always had a way you can drop down to get back to exactly where you want to be. But
it's so horror movie, right? Yeah. It's like you got to go all the way. You got to commit before you can get out, and then you got to get out. It's like very horror. Yeah, I felt like It's
so there's a point. Yeah, so there's a point where the rainbow killer, you can raincoat killer. I keep crossing rainbow with raincoat. The raincoat killer is behind you, and then darts off to the left, and because you've already come through here, and if you're a good, you're a game player from long standing, you've already explored. There's 2 ways to get through this area, and he's taking the other fork, and you're like, oh no, and you can't see what's ahead of you, so you have this additional dread of like, am I going to run straight into him? And at a certain point, you run up and you push this box because there's a box in your way. And then he comes charging up on the box in the picture-in-picture and and swings at you, but hits the box so that you can run away. It is beautifully done. It's like at an intersection and the box crumbles, it's a crate, and he destroys it, which, if you do that, it takes you several bashes and he just does it in one. So you're like, oh, he is really more powerful than me. I normally have to shoot that thing like 4 times to break open a box or whatever it is, or hit it a bunch of times with the knife or the bar or whatever. And he just swung the axe once and it crumpled like a paper bag. Mm-hmm. It's really, really good at playing on elements that you've already encountered a lot, the level, the objects, et cetera, to really pay off on that. Like, we've talked about games, survival horror games being disempowerment fantasies, at least as they start, when the horror is kind of at its strongest. And this is a great moment where it like uses lots of stuff to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And remember, and just to point it out again, and remember that this whole sequence you're running generally toward the camera, pushing boxes and stuff. It's sort of the camera's focused behind you, and there's the picture-in-picture. So I felt like there were a lot of ways to scare you. They had a lot of tools in their toolbox during this sequence because it was so different from the rest of the game. You know what I mean? Like you said, him splitting off, and there's just a lot going on that I thought was fairly clever. I keep thinking. I think you maybe mentioned it in the first episode as a theme, but I always get the saying wrong. But what is when your reach out stretches your grasp?
when your reach exceeds your grasp.
Your reach exceeds your grasp. I mean, this game is very.
Which is what has happened with you and common phrases.
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, there could be a whole coffee table book about all the ones I've gotten wrong. But um, anyway, or joke book maybe. A paperback joke book is
Yeah.
more appropriate.
All rock, all rocks.
All rocks. Yeah. uh, but uh, this game is so ambitious.
Yeah.
They and it reminds me, and this is going way back, but I think we reference it a lot in our Final Fantasy IX series. We talked a lot about the way that game was constructed and how there's so many one-offs and so many like moments that they just handcrafted because they wanted to. It's like, for this moment, we're going to do this. We're going to hang from a rope or whatever, and you don't do that anywhere else, or you do it a couple times. It's not systemic at all. It's all just hand done. And, there's definitely systems, and we've talked about the simulation, and this is open world, and, there's mechanics and systems at play, but it does feel like, and there's sequences later beyond this that I'm also would put in this bucket that I play, where it's just like they just kept doing what they wanted to. And to some degree the game shows, because it is so unpolished.
Yeah.
But that's the cost of doing this, and so you kind of take the good with the bad in that regard. But this whole sequence, my mouth was open as far as like, I cannot believe they're doing this. Like, how did this even get approved? But good for them that it did.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I look at this game and all of the things that are in it. It's from a tech standpoint even, and it's like, well, it streams continuously. It has loads, whenever you go inside a building. But you have this open world you're streaming, which was, I mean, not brand new, but it's another thing you've got to put in your engine if you're writing it from scratch. At this time, what was the scripting the whole open world, so you've got these the actors who are moving around all over the place. That's a ton of authoring. What does that look like? I mean, we've seen something like that in like The Last Express, which we talked about I don't know, a year or two ago, and that having sort of that had state machines for all the characters, so that they could actually sort of independently exit, or re-enter them, after they've encountered the player, if the player kind of messes with them. I don't know if that's what's going on here as an implementation, or if they just kind of suspend their script and resume it. It'd be kind of hard to obviously know. I have some suspicions just based on some things I've seen, but I don't really know. It's probably not that deep, but again, it's another thing you have to put in your game and into your engine, and figure out how you're going to do that, and how you're going to author that, and like, who's responsible, how many people do you need to do it. The more characters you have, the more you need to do it, etc. And it's like every thing that they're adding is another one of those. It's like, oh, we have to have third person hand-to-hand combat, and third person gun combat, etc. And that the systems just start to pile up, and all that.
It reminds me of Beyond Good and Evil as well.
Yeah. Yep. Another good touch point.
A lot of an open, very open game, but also a lot of like custom sections, and yeah, it was just an era. It was an era where that can be done. It's like, where they're like, yeah, we're just gonna brute force some of this stuff and do it all in one game, versus making a game focused around one or two of these things that you tend to do today.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're willing to, I think the part of the reason why games cost so much is that there's so much more expectation of these kind of like every game, games that are like, they all have the progression system, and they have some kind of mount, whether it's a car or a horse or whatever, and it's got combat, and it's got NPCs with dialogue trees, or or at least little scenes that set up your quests. And I mean, it's just and the layers of all those things. If you're also going to do that to a high degree of polish, like, no wonder the budgets are where they are.
Yeah.
you know.
And it's interesting too, because I feel like the bespoke, I'm trying to figure out what lessons to learn from this in a modern day, to your point about like the expense, but also just the game, or whatever you'd say, the every game, like you're saying. And everyone has those games in their heads. I won't definitely won't throw
Yeah,
out
I'm not even
criticisms there.
besmirching. I'm just saying it's like
Yeah, but it is what it
yeah,
is.
yeah,
But
it's
I
an
was about
evolutionary trend, let's say.
right, right, but I was about to a little bit in that I really appreciate. I guess what would how would I put it? I appreciate in this game and games of this era that I want to learn from for modern games. I appreciate being surprised.
Yeah.
And I know I've talked to you about a couple of them, but over the past couple of years, I probably have started about maybe half a dozen of those every games you're talking about, basically big open world games that have all of the different check boxes of things you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
There's some third person, some first person. We all know what I'm talking about, and I won't
It's
even get
there's a
into them.
map with layer upon layer of things you can
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
page through of like, well, I only want to do these right now, and
right.
all of those might be mini games, or they might be little explorations of a space, or they might be, whatever, there or a
Yeah,
quest or whatever. Yeah.
some have come out this fall that are the formula, right? And they're
Yeah.
very, so, I haven't played the recent ones, but by all accounts, they're very good. People are liking them, and but I, for myself as a player, I keep trying to play some of these games that everyone talks about, that are these kinds of open world games that just have this checklist of things that they have in them, and they all have basically the same thing. And I keep bouncing off of them
Yeah.
because I know what my next 200 hours is going to be. I know what
Yeah.
my future is, and I can just envision it. Yes, the setting might be different, and yes, there might be some nuances that are different here and there, but generally I know what I'm in for. And I don't know if I'm just getting old or don't have the time or what, but I'm just like, I need to be delighted. I need some surprises. I need to not know what the next 200 hours is going to be.
Yeah.
Yes, there'll be a story, and yes, there'll be different things. And so, bringing it back to Deadly Premonition, again, one of my big surprises for this game, which is just more of an education thing, is that it was open world. But even within that, we went into this sawmill. The sawmill completely changes tone. We're now in a combat sequence, and now we're in this weird picture in picture running toward the camera sequence, with this undefeatable enemy. Yes, QTE's bad decision that I hope
Yeah.
we learn
Yeah.
from.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in a second. But and then there's just more of that stuff that later, and I'm sure there's even more coming. So I don't know. I guess it's this kind of game today would be very expensive to make in a polished manner, but I just kind of miss I miss those surprises these days.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I think you're kind of putting your finger on is that when I look at some of these games, and I play and enjoy them, and so I'm not, like I said, I'm
You
not.
play you definitely play them more than I
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. What I see is like, oh, I see the production methodology on the screen. That's what I see is like,
Yeah,
oh,
for sure.
we needed to be able to say, here's the checklist of things you have to do this kind of content in our game. Not we're going to have a piece here that, is this experience that has this tone, go figure it out, right? There's a lot more independence, I feel like, in the people putting together the sections of this game that we've talked about. And, other things that can do it, like Beyond Good and Evil or whatever, from that kind of era, where it's like, we're just going to figure it out when we get there, and these people are responsible for it, go figure it out, and not we're going to figure it out with a small team, or maybe on the last project we figured that out and now it's just another thing we put in every game, but we have a production list of things that have to be done and how many of them they're going to be, so that we can budget it, and send it upstairs and then tell us it's okay, as
Yeah.
well as sharing, because of the scope of these things, as well as, part of the reason for that methodology is that the games of this scope are often shared across multiple studios around the world. So it's like you
Right.
have this additional burden of like, you can't even necessarily get all the right creative people in a room, so you actually need to put in these pretty heavy guardrails around what individual piece of this game is meant to be, because you can't directly communicate the vision anymore, because you're working with 1,200 people say, or whatever, like I don't even know anymore,
Right.
and so I think that's been part of it as well. It's like there's a lot of cost that goes into the art, and that's probably the most visible thing, but there's also a ton of just the labor of putting the pieces together, for each one. And it's like, oh, there's got to be a little in-engine cutscene that introduces the little quest line, and then there's got to be another one at the middle that kind of like puts a twist on it, and then there's another one at the end that puts a button on it, or strings it to the next one or wherever it is. And like all of those are like, okay, well, you need a person who's going to operate the cameras. Yes, there's somebody had to go and make the faces and like what clothing that person was. So there's like a character constructor, like, and you just like, and you could probably sit down and go through any one of these pieces of these big games and go, check, and just like write down all the things you see and then see how many of them carry over. And that's the methodology for making that kind of content for that kind of game.
Yeah. And that's why, and as you're speaking, that's why I just keep coming back to the word formula, and it is a production defense mechanism, right?
Yeah.
It's like and some of those big franchises that have been doing it forever, for many years now, have been iterating over the years, so they have expanded their formula. But yeah, I mean, the two examples that hit me with
more
this
of a
game,
formula is still a formula. So.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's just like making the formula more harder,
more terms
to
on
do.
The formula. I mean, the other thing before you switch to that is that because you have these formulas, it's also just you can use cheaper labor to do those things as well.
Right.
So.
Yeah. It's more of a known. Yeah, there's fewer because unknowns, and especially in anything, but especially in game development, unknowns are anti-production, right? Because you can't measure them. So if you have a formula that's more knowns, even if you add something to a formula, you can probably quantify it better, or you can. We've done it, so it's not perfect, but it's easier than not knowing anything. But yeah, I think with Deadly Premonition, like the thing the two, to your point about like I guess the production elements, and what I would say maybe is systematizing certain elements of these games, that is interesting to play a game of this era like Deadly Premonition to see like how much they try to systematize and how much is custom, probably custom. Two examples that in one of the big games I played recently, where one is mini games that impact your sort of character's progression, where they've turned a mini game into some sort of contextual reference of the world. Say it's a cultural kind of reference, and they've made it into a little mini game that's a system and mechanics, and then you get a point, right? And then okay, I'm upgrading something with this point, and then they pepper those around the world. But it then diminishes this sort of like point into this, or more importantly, I think that whatever the contextualization of it is, say it's a cultural aspect, it kind of like it waters it down to just become this little mini game. And it's like, well, now I don't care as much about it because it's now this thing, and because they can make it a little bit more unique and bespoke in a game like Deadly Premonition. I'm trying to pull on a thread that can help us today, not us specifically, but game developers today. And then the other tension, which is on the opposite side of the spectrum for me, that's interesting to me about this game too, that makes me think of some of these modern big every games, is how the main story integrates into them. That's one of the big tensions, especially the Rockstar games are always the best example of like they're so story driven, but yet they're open world. So it's like, how do you know that there's sort of like a whole team of people putting basically a linear, steps to get through a narrative in and amongst this world where there's 100 other things going on. And it's been interesting to watch that happen here because, like you said, there's not a time limit. And I haven't yet felt, it actually relates to another quick note I'll make that I had in my notes that I don't want to rabbit hole too much on because maybe we'll do it next time. But one thing I've appreciated about this game so far, and I don't know if this will continue to be the case, but basically the structure of the story so far has been suspect based, character based. So it's like, who's the next suspect that we're going to go talk to? And it's like this chain of events there, and you can actually talk to some of them, I think, out of order, it seems like. But I have really appreciated that, because in an open world simulated, semi-simulated open world, it feels natural to me to be like, who's the next most important suspect we should go talk to? And then we go talk to them, and they're living their life. So if I don't go talk to them right now, it's not like that big of a deal, because they just live in the town with everybody else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
then when I go talk to them, it triggers the next narrative beat to move forward linearly. So whether completely intentional or not, it's an interesting kind of mini takeaway for me of like, in this open world with set pieces, but also like gives me a little bit of freedom to roam around. And maybe that'll change. Maybe there'll be a time when you really have to do a thing.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
certainly,
there's always a
certainly
time.
towards the end of the game, there's a narrowing down, like because we're wrapping
Sure.
things up,
I
right? But
assume, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's definitely a point at which is like, okay, now you're on the ride, right? I mean, and you can't really go back. And I don't remember how well it signals that you're getting there again, because the first time I played this, I wasn't really aware of the
Right.
level to which the town was simulated. So my recollections of this is all super muddy, but there's definitely a point where it's like, okay, beyond this point, like you're not making a lot of decisions about where you're going. You're going to just follow, and games tend to signpost that stuff pretty well these days. They'll literally just say, beyond here, you're not going to be able to visit such and such a place for a while, and at that point. The Where was I going to go with it? Oh yeah, so it again, that reminds me of kind of the Last Express with the state machines. Is like that person like has a thing that they know, like in the Last Express, if you interact with somebody or reveal something about them, or learn something about them, that will make them, advance their own agenda, as it were, right? So it's like, oh, somebody knows about me,
Right.
on this train. I'd better, get moving on my spy plot or my weapons trafficking plot or whatever that is, or maybe even make an attempt on that person's life, right? And this is kind of similar in that way. It's like, oh, okay, I'm advancing the plot. There's kind of a big engine of the plot, but how those little pieces plug into them, parts of it can be just done wherever they're done, wherever you happen to encounter this person. If you're going to ask them a question that, which is very, like you could imagine a lot of episodes of Twin Peaks of like, well, what if this happened later in the day? And it wouldn't be a
Yeah.
big deal, right? It's
Right.
just, it just happens where it happens,
That's
and
what I was
yeah,
about to say. Yeah, the fantasy fulfillment, because I'm watching the show at the same time as playing the game, the fantasy fulfillment in this game is very high for me, because as you watch the show, and it's not one for one, but it's enough, it's close enough. As you watch the show, there's times where I'm like, I really want to be in Twin Peaks, helping him with this, helping all of them with this murder mystery. And then I get to go play Deadly Premonition, and I get some of that, right? It's like,
yeah.
and because they chose, and I'm thankful for you telling me about the simulation aspect of it, and the open world aspect, because I do get a sense when I'm roaming around the town in the game that it's kind of a real town, to sound cheesy about it. And so like if I need to go talk to Diane, I know she's in the gallery, and I do have a window of time I have to do it in, but it's not like a tiny window. So I have a little bit of slop in there. And if I want to go to the diner before going to see Diane, it's not a big deal,
Yeah.
because this is like a quote unquote living town. And heck, I don't know, maybe there's a time when you need to go talk to a suspect and they go to the store and you meet them in the store. That would be awesome. I wonder if that could be possible. And so you just meet them out in their life. That's like
Well,
almost
any character you haven't met, if you look on the map, any character you haven't met will just show up as suspect.
yeah, yeah. I made that note too, and yeah, after though that yeah after the next event for you,
Yeah,
that
the town meeting, you've met
you
so
kind
many
of check
people
a
at that
bunch of them
point.
off the list.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah. But then once you've actually met a person, so it's like before the town meeting, you can actually. So I'm the morning of the day of the town meeting, like, and I actually I wish I had done more before the tree, before the crime scene. I wish I had done even more because there's a lot of there was a lot of time that I had left that I could have spent, but we were also coming up on recording time, so I was like, well, I better wrap this up. But I'm trying to spend a lot of time figuring out what people are doing. Like I'm going to try to see if I can get to Emily at her house. Like I know where her house is. It's 7:30 in the morning or so. Her door is still closed at 7:30. Is it going to open at 8? Is it going to open at 8:30? And again, I think I've referenced this game before. It's like Witness or Deadline, the old Infocom games, where there is a schedule for that person, and you might see something interesting if you're there at the right time. And the quest slash task system at least helps you. If you go to the map, you can hit, for me, I guess it's a circle button. You can look at the list of tasks, and you don't know what they are. They're just numbered, but it does tell you what chapters they're available in. And so you can actually at that point go and be like, oh, there's like 6 things I can do here in chapter 6 that I haven't done yet, and you can go run around trying to figure out what they are, and you are making some random guesses at that point. A lot of them are like multiple times. There's very few that are just like, this is only available at in chapter 2 or whatever. If there's any that are like that, there might be a couple. And those are ones I think you would probably have to use a guide for, probably because they're a little obscure sometimes. But and I really love that about the quest, sort of task, sort of get to know the townspeople system is like, you can go and explore and figure that stuff out for yourself. And, this is a sort of game where you could replay chapters multiple times just to be like, okay, what's the way to do this? Like The Last Express with its multiple Fabergé eggs.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, the fact that Last Express has different endings to accommodate, kind of like different degrees of success and failure, was really like a critical. Like I didn't, I don't think definitely didn't get, like, I guess, the real ending of that game, but the endings that I did get, I felt like were a complete story, and I might have messed up, but it accommodated that,
Yeah.
which seems very like rare.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I don't know what it is. I don't think I'm describing it well or putting my finger on it, but I just think it's really fascinating to me that a primary, quote, for lack of a better term, a primary objective for the main story is just kind of like, because like in something like Red Dead or something like that, it's not, on the map where you have to go to trigger it. But once, this is kind of what I'm trying to get at, and I don't mean to like point fingers at Rockstar specifically, but it's the example that comes to my mind. When you get to that location, which is on your clock, sometimes they're timed, but, and I'll just say this generally for open world games with a big story in them, where it is on the map, you go there when you want to, but when you get there, it's like it usually triggers this whole to do, as if the time had stood still for
Right.
you. You know what I mean? Like, and so like big cutscenes happen, and like a big pomp and circumstance and all this stuff often happens because it's a big main storyline. And so far, when I have progressed things forward in this game, it's still a conversation, and it's still like appropriately. Now, like you said, later in the game, I'm sure it becomes much more dramatic and action packed, I guess.
Yeah.
But it just feels like I'm just interrupting their day, as I would if I were a FBI agent, investigating a crime. It's like I'm knocking on the door, and there's, oh, hey, I heard about you. You're that FBI agent, and it's small talk.
You're FBI agent Morgan. Oh, please call me York. Nobody calls me Special Agent Morgan.
Yeah. Or recently, someone called me Scarface.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
He's got a scar over his left, his left eye, his eyebrow.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, but it's just interesting to compare it to, to modern day stuff.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, I think we should probably touch on the Twin Peaks of it all again, because we're sort of talking about the setting and the characters. And you had remarked, you've already mentioned that since you've continued to watch the series while you're playing this, that you in pre-show you mentioned you have now kind of a different perspective than you maybe had, last week or the week before.
Yeah, for anyone who, who, like I said last episode, I think anyone who really wants to deep dive, or maybe you're already a Twin Peaks fan, but yeah, it's very interesting and I think special experience for me to be watching the show just by sheer accident. It wasn't the plan, but in retrospect, I'm really glad it's happening because I'm able to play the game, watch an episode, play the game, watch an episode. So there's like I really have direct comparisons. And I had actually had forgotten that Coop does have this sort of premonition thing with the
Yeah.
dreams and everything. So I was like, oh, wait a second. Okay. So there actually that is pretty on the nose. But what Brett's alluding to, I mentioned in pre-show that I'm coming around on, and I guess it makes sense now that I think about it, that the more I'm playing Deadly Premonition, I am becoming much more appreciative of Swery's the places where he has taken a different turn than Twin Peaks. So clearly the inspiration's there. A lot of things you can see are almost one for one. But like York is definitely not Coop. Uh, there's enough of the crime and sort of the setting. You can see what I would assume are, whether they're personal influences or cultural influences or even regional influences. Like there's definitely enough different special and, solely motivated by this game's vision that is not Twin Peaks. So the needle for me has when I first started, I was like, this is a ripoff. This is like they have gone too far. Twin Peaks is sacred. You know, there's one for ones for this and this and this. And there definitely still are some of those things, but they always have this tweak on them. And now as I've been gone further in the game, there's definitely some fresh things that are not in Twin Peaks that are different. So I wanted to give them credit for that, that yes, there is a pot lady who holds a pot all the time, but then like she has an interesting backstory that's more going on there too. So, I don't know. They took their inspirations where we know they took them from, but at the same time, I think they're having their own fun creating their own world too. And like you said, they do seem to be self-aware about the uncanny valleyness of it all. So I've come around that it's more in the homage the category than the than the ripoff category, I
The,
guess.
the straight up intellectual theft.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not the what was the I lost the phrase, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's there's enough. Yeah, there's enough. If people ever do play this game, and you're a fan of Twin Peaks, don't fret. I think there's definitely some problematic stuff. It doesn't get better at that, so be warned on that. York is not the greatest in some significant ways, but there's definitely a lot going for it.
For sure. Well, with what our one last element, I don't know if we did it last week. We're going to try to remember to do it. Is to pick your favorite collectible card that you picked up this week. This is something you mentioned last week. I don't remember if we got around to it. So,
I don't think we did. I can do
yeah,
last week too.
last week mine would have probably been yours from this week because I found it last week, but I have a new one this week. So,
Yeah, last week's would have been Gina's Sponge,
yes,
uh, which is a
I think
card you get.
yeah, would have been mine too. Actually, I got it last week. So,
Okay, and the first week I got Turkey Sandwich, which
yeah,
which was where I
uh-huh.
was like, that was where I was like, that's where I started, where I made the note of like, oh, we need to actually, this needs to be a gag. We need to do this every week because I can only imagine they get weirder and weirder. Some of them are just characters. Oh, the other thing to mention about the cards, which I really love too, is that once you get the card, if you go into the interface, they have a written description that goes with the card that gives you more backstory.
Oh, okay,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, that's
so
right.
if you want
Yeah,
more,
there's like a
well,
booklet, as if you were
yeah.
collecting actual collectible cards,
Oh,
and
it's
there's more
great. It's
information.
great. I
Yeah,
love it. I love collecting things and
yeah.
completionism and all that stuff and lore. I mean, if you're a lore person like me, then there's like basically these are lore cards if you go and read the little, it's like a GI Joe card or something.
I will say,
Dossier.
that this game, I don't actually find those things to be terribly separate because it feels like the motives of the characters are part of the charm of the characters. Like their backstory is evident in their performance, quote unquote,
Mm. Hmm.
So it does feel more like it's part of the game and not just ancillary whatever, the stuff
Fair.
that I don't normally care about. So
Yeah,
um
that's
although I
fair.
haven't spent a lot of time reading the cards, I do remember that that's a thing you could do. So
Well, next episode, we definitely, I'm sure we'll talk about the town hall meeting because that I think is where we will then go through the characters
well,
basically.
what was your card for this week?
So my card for this week is Polly's Pepper Shaker. She is always talking. She always mishears you because she has bad hearing. Or, by the way, I made a note. I don't think Polly has bad hearing. I
I
think
don't know.
Polly.
I think
I think
Polly
she
hears
can hear.
just what she wants to
I
hear.
think she hears exactly what she wants to hear, and then throws you a loop. But she always is thinking that you said something about the food needing more pepper. Like almost every conversation, she brings up pepper. So of course, her card or one of the cards for her is literally it's a pepper picture of a pepper shaker, like just a diner pepper shaker, and it's Polly's pepper shaker. So,
She is
like what?
she's a spicy lady.
What kind of
Um
collectible card is that? Oh my god. A sponge is a collectible card for Pete's sake. But I just think the cards are like the distilled down essence of this game for me. It's like this if you want to understand what this game is, just look at these ridiculous cards.
Mine was the legendary guitar Grekach. So
What? Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
yeah, that was one I found because I was tracking down a character that I knew, like, so I knew where that person, because I haven't been to the town meeting. I have fewer characters than I know if I haven't gone and gone to places. So I was going to a place where there were two suspects I didn't know and two suspects I did. And I was like, oh, what's going? What are they doing? Is that a meeting? Like what's going on? So
Mm,
I was trying to get to that place. That's actually one of the things I really like about the open world as well. Is like
yeah.
you look at the map and like because these characters, if because you have their names, if you see their names, you're like, oh, I know what that's about. And if you see names that you don't, suspects you haven't met yet, you also are like, is there something going on there that I should know? And
Yeah.
so it just adds this mystery again,
You
like those
fill in the
old
blanks.
those old Infocom games of like, oh, this person's heading out the back of the house. Well, I know that other person is back there. Are they going to talk because one of them knows a secret about the other? That sort of thing. I mean, that's a
I
very,
can't believe Infocom Games did that. Like when you
yeah.
keep describing that, I'm like, how does that even work? That
It's
sounds
it's
or how
fantastic. I
did
mean,
as a player, how did you even keep track of that? It's just
you
crazy.
played it multiple times and
Yeah,
did things over and over again
that's
to kind of
impressive.
map out what was going on. Yeah, it's not those sorts of games were not like you play through it once,
Yeah,
and
right.
you're done. You play up to a point and you go, huh. Well, I guess I'll start over and see what if I had gone over here and done that, which is very Last Express, except Last Express supports it more systematically than the old
Yeah,
Infocom
right,
games
right.
did.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
yeah, the
The
legendary
sus
guitar Grekach.
the whole suspect thing, that really goes hand in hand. And by the way, I got Polly's card, the Polly's Pepper card from a side quest.
Okay.
That was the reward for it.
Yeah.
So that was actually kind of cool to find out that you can get cards that way. They're not just in world collectibles.
Yeah.
I mean, both terrifying as well because it's like I probably missed some,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but
That's the hard part is like you'll get to the end and be like, oh my God, I missed one in the 8th chapter.
yeah, it's gonna happen. I already know. But I just yeah, just to end on the suspect thing in general, like your point about that I really love the suspect. I wouldn't call it a system per se, but just the concept that how they've implemented it, where until you meet somebody they are a suspect and they're peppered throughout the town and you can kind of go there at any point. And just this sense, like, it just really feels like you're solving a crime. And it really, I think I said this last episode, but even after this last session, these last few sessions, I really wish there were more crime games where
Yeah.
you are solving a
Yeah, I
crime
was gonna
for
say not
real.
committing the crimes, because there's plenty
Yeah,
of those.
exactly, exactly. Like, why do we have this this criminal fantasy fulfillment being done so often? When, yeah, I want to be
I want to
I
say
want to be
because
the
America, Tim, but
yeah, fair enough, I guess. But like, and again, we mentioned Heavy Rain, but that's not really what I mean, because that my impression, though I haven't played that game, is that is more of just a linear story. I don't know how much you're really like exploring and like this game and trying to
it's
find
it is
suspects.
it is a little different from that, because the suspect is not fixed in that game. The person who
What?
did it is not a fixed person.
Oh,
Because
huh.
the person who so one of the things about some of those games is that I haven't played all of them, but that, like, and in particular with Heavy Rain, this is true, and I think it's true of Fahrenheit
Oh,
as
because of
well.
the branching you
Well,
have created.
a character could die,
Yeah.
who might otherwise be the killer. So they
Oh,
actually have to write it in such a way that the killer could be anybody.
weird.
Yeah. Yeah,
Huh.
it's
Yeah. I mean,
sort of
then,
like
then
that classic. That's another Agatha Christie thing, right? There's a play, Mousetrap.
yeah, Mousetrap.
W-
I was in it.
yeah, where like you ask the audience, like, who do you think did it, and like you
Yeah,
take a vote,
fair.
and then you play it out that way, and that's sort of what Heavy Rain is doing.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, that's a different way to approach it then. Yeah. But what I mean is really like, it's sort of like you mentioned last episode, the Batman detective stuff. But like,
Yeah,
imagine a game just about that where there is a killer out there and you do have to be a real agent and figure it out. Like, I want a Twin Peaks game that's really or an X Files game or something, that's like, there's just true crime is so big right now.
well,
And for good.
if only we knew some game developers.
Yeah, exactly. Let's pitch it.
All right. Well, with that, with the horror, the true horror of this Halloween system, this month rather, is of pitching. Let's turn to our outro. We love to get your reviews and email. Hold them and try to send them in before next week, because we'll be doing that live stream. It'd be great to have some email in the can. We have one already, but more with questions that we can answer and interact with the audience are ideal. You can send that email to devgameclub@gmail.com. We're on the web at devgameclub.com, and my co-host and occasionally me, Twitch at twitch.tv/
Tim Longo Jr. with a JR at the end.
Yeah, the day this comes out, we'll be finishing Portal 2 co-op, assuming it doesn't take us too long to play Spelunky. So we will see how that goes.
Well, in one case, definitely won't be that long, but
Yeah,
in another case, it could be.
Could be. We have a fan
turkey.
run. It will not be a turkey. It could be mid-turkey, I guess. I haven't played tomorrow's yet. We have a fan run Discord we've referred to on the cast a couple of times already tonight. There was a link for that in the show notes. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast Aaron Evers, and our logo, that Discord, our merch store, all by Mark Garcia. Have fun keeping your pearls of wisdom to yourself this week, and good night.
Good night.
Keep your pearls to yourself, pot lady.